Poplar. Poplar is a soft wood. That means when it's hit with vibrations of the string, it tends to soak some in. As a result, it's not what you'd call a very resonant wood. In fact, it kind of blurs some of the mid-range, which for some people might mean a muddy tone. The thing is that it's very abundant, grows fast, and is affordable to produce. Therefore, it's very commonly found in entry-level instruments in most major brands. For example, the entire Squier line uses poplar almost exclusively. You'll find this tonewood in basses with a solid color since it turns greenish with time, and it doesn't have any fancy wood grain patterns. It sounds similar to alder, only mellower, not as punchy or edgy. Basswood. Basswood is soft and light. It had a big surge in popularity during the 80s because it smoothed some frequencies away and gave it a mid-range sharp enough to cut through the mix. Many favored it so they could play aggressively without going shrill. For being soft and light, basswood is easy to carve, reducing production times and costs. Moreover, it's very abundant and affordable, commonly found with a very plain, almost non-existent grain. So, in a time in which flashy paint jobs, high grain, and big hair were the rule, basswood became the perfect match for manufacturers. Basswood is solid enough to endure the harshness of the road. You can find it, for example, in the great Yamaha RBX series, as well as the super popular Ibanez Geo series. It's a cost-effective solution that's solid and does the job. Laurel. Laurel is bright with a defined lower midsection. It's very hard and stable, which makes it perfect for fretboards. The biggest companies in the world have been using it for decades as a replacement for rosewood because of its similar appearance and tone. Rosewood is known for being sweet, tight, and punchy all at once. Laurel is brighter and less defined, but it is way more abundant and sustainable. It grows largely throughout Southeast Asia, so supply is in no way endangered. The entire Squier line and the Fender standard come with Laurel fretboards, and with increasing limitations imposed on rosewood, the number of basses with Laurel fretboards is prone to increase. Although it's not as good looking or sweet sounding, Laurel is closer to rosewood in tone than it is in price. It's a good alternative for entry-level bass guitars and instruments, maximizing tone while keeping costs low. Alder. Alder is a very balanced tone wood that keeps lows, mids, and highs present but in check. That said, the upper mid-range is more pronounced than the rest of the frequencies, which provides the punchy honk or twang that made brands like Fender worldwide famous. Although it's not a particularly good-looking grain, it's been the go-to for instrument bodies since its introduction in 1956. It's easy to find it in basses that go from the modern Fender American Ultra to some of the first precision bass models ever made. It became the industry standard and was used widely until alternative, more affordable wood types came up, like poplar. Nowadays, it's mostly used only on instruments above the $700 mark. Times might have changed, but alder's role in music hasn't. Today, most of the mid-priced and high-end basses in most catalogs are made of alder. Ash. The ash used to make musical instruments comes from two different families. One is the northern hard ash, which is a very dense, heavy tone wood in a creamy yellow color that very rarely has purple or pink tints. It has open, deep pores that make the paint process harder and more expensive. The other, swamp ash, is lighter with a very similar creamy color, but with a more attractive look. It's not uncommon to find clear finishes over swamp ash instruments. It was used in the first efforts by Fender that would leave the factory with an almost see-through blonde finish. Swamp ash is pricier than northern hard ash, and since it's lighter and softer, it's not as resonant and has a bigger mid-range. It adds some mellow high-end while adding steroids to the low and mids. It's the perfect wood type to cut through the mix. Northern hard ash is heavier, more resonant, and has a distinctive brighter tone. Although the mellow high-end isn't there, the attack is at a different level. Also, as a byproduct, sustain is increased. A great example of an ash body and its bold sound is Joe Dart's Music Man signature bass. Mahogany. Mahogany is a dense, dark, and heavy-tone wood that's been used to make musical instruments for many decades. Its great tonal properties such as the resonance, the bump in the mid-lows, and the sustain make it a rocker favorite since rock and roll was first invented. Although the low end tends to be pronounced, round, and punchy, the lows and highs aren't as noticeable as is with alder or ash. On the contrary, it's warmer. That's the main reason why most manufacturers add a maple top, to add an edge to the warmth. Mahogany is not only used to make solid body instruments. Its natural sound makes great acoustic bass sounds. Like other woods on this list, its availability is becoming increasingly scarce. The production moved from Honduras to Africa, and efforts are still being made worldwide to make it more sustainable. Brands like Gibson, Jackson, Spector, and many other high-end metal-oriented brands choose mahogany to make their basses. Metal players need that extra oomph more than any other genre. The Yamaha TRBX 500 series, the famous Ibanez SR 500, and the Gibson SG are all great examples of mahogany's mid-range and mellow high-end. Mahogany, just like alder, can be used in any style with great results. That said, rock will always be its most suitable genre. Pine. Pine is a soft wood that dents and scratches easily. Nevertheless, it carries the heritage of the first bolt-on solid body instruments. The first instruments to ever come out of the Fender factory were made of pine. Although it was replaced by alder and ash, the high end, the transparency, and the punch became impossible to reproduce with alder instruments for those trying to mimic that 50s bass sound. Recently, pine made a comeback, not only in custom shop or other high-end and one-off instruments, but also in Fender's line. The resonance, bright top end, durability, and low price make one wonder why it isn't used more often in instrument making. The reason pine is not as popular is because it's known for having many knots and marks of its fast growth that are unwanted for bass makers. Therefore, many pieces of pine are needed to make a flawless bass body. That said, pine body basses are coming back, and so is its powerful mid-range. Korina. Korina is a lightweight hardwood that comes in two opposite tonalities, black and white. Unlike other pieces of wood, they don't come from different types of Korina trees. Rather, they come from different parts of the same tree. While the dark specimen known as black Korina comes from the center of the tree, the white specimen, aka white Korina, comes from the outer parts of the same tree. Although its color varies dramatically from that of mahogany, they share quite a few characteristics. While the lower mid-range and bite are big on both, the high end, which is tamed and mellow in mahogany, becomes alive, making the instrument more vibrant and ready to cut through. Korina had its big moment in the 1950s when futuristic designs came to life, like the Gibson Flying V and Explorer bass collections. These were made of Korina and painted yellow on top to further accentuate the wood's bright buttery color. Epiphany and Gibson still offer basses made of Korina for being a good alternative to mahogany with its own personality. It's been used extensively since the 1950s, therefore it's not as easy to stock. These instruments are becoming rarer by the minute, so try one while they're still around. Walnut. Walnut is a heavy and dense toned wood. It's often comparable to mahogany, just heavier and denser. It's been used in musical instruments making for decades, but also to make anything that would endure hardcore conditions, like gun stocks, for example. Its hardness makes it very difficult to break or tear apart. Nevertheless, it's easy to route and shape. The dark chocolate color with beautiful patterns has made it a go-to for bodies with a clear coating on top. The grain is tight, which makes it easier to apply coatings and fill pores. Likewise, its density has a slight bump in the mid-range and high-end when compared to mahogany, which has a similar low-end and low mid-range. This translates into a different type of snap while keeping the low-end tight and punchy. Although it is similar tone-wise, walnut is heavier than mahogany, placing it as one of the heaviest options on this list. Putting up with the extra weight has some payback. Great walnut bass guitars by Spector, Rickenbacker, Warwick, Gibson, Fodera, and Ibanez sound outstanding in every frequency. Maple. Maple is one of the hardest woods on this list and the most commonly found in bass guitars worldwide. There are several uses for maple in musical instrument making, for necks, fretboards, and bodies. Maple is the most common wood to find in bass necks around the globe. It's so abundant and easy to source that not even entry-grade instruments make necks of alternative wood. That said, not every piece of maple is the same. For example, highly figured bird's eye, quilted, or flamed patterns can be found on high-end instruments, while close to white plain maple is used on a wide variety of prices. Although a very common use for maple is a fretboard, there's a nastiness and mid-range bite in maple fretboards that is impossible to get with rosewood. Plus, it was the first material used to build Fender's instruments in the 50s. Moreover, those necks used to be made of one piece of maple. Finally, finding a solid body instrument made of maple is very rare because it's such a heavy tone wood. Nevertheless, it's been widely used to make hollow and semi-hollow instruments as well as tops. For example, anything in Gibson's ES line, including Jack Cassidy's model Laurel are all made of laminated maple. Also, the Spector SLS Elite is a great example of a highly figured maple top. With one of the tightest pores on this list, this tone wood is bright, punchy, and cuts the mix like a sledgehammer. You'll find maple in virtually every Fender bass you pick up, and a plethora of other brands. It's one of the most widely used tone woods in music history. Koa. Koa only grows in Hawaii, so there's a very limited supply worldwide for this precious and scarce tone wood. It's one of the best looking pieces on this list, and it's often compared to mahogany because of its tonal properties and natural beauty. Although it shares some of the big beefy low end and prominent low mid-range, Koa offers a different kind of high end that's more musical and articulated than that of mahogany. You could say that Koa sits comfortably between mahogany and walnut in terms of the higher frequencies in the spectrum. That said, since it's so scarce and beautiful, it's reserved only for the most expensive projects, and it's rarely found in production line instruments. Even then, it's mostly turned into highly figured tops rather than an entire solid body. Koa is also commonly found in the production of elite-level acoustic instruments by brands such as Taylor. For those with an allowing budget, a Koa bass is a strange find with a unique sound. Bubinga. Bubinga is a very heavy and very dense wood. It's one of those wood types that you won't find as a full bill, but will definitely add its own to the final tone. For example, Bubinga is not hard to find as a reinforcement for bass necks and bodies in a laminated format. Even in that small participation in the whole, it has its effect on the tone, enhancing sustain and giving it a heavy bite. You won't come across many Bubinga bass guitars. Nevertheless, big manufacturers looking to give their instruments a beefier punch do make it part of the mix. Warwick is a brand that commonly uses it in models like the Corvette and the Star II. Although Bubinga is a rare and precious tone wood, it's a great addition to any bass guitar. Wenge. Wenge is a dense and heavy wood, but not so commonly found in musical instrument making. It's almost as resonant and musical as maple, but its color is very dark and beautiful with patterns in dark chocolate and brown. Wenge has been used mostly to make necks due to its incredible weight to stiffness ratio. Companies like Ibanez and Court have used Wenge for necks and fretboards, and so has Warwick. Wenge in bass guitars is not so common, but with rosewood being increasingly restricted, we might be seeing more of it in the near future. Rosewood. Rosewood is a hard and heavy precious tone wood that has been used to make musical instruments for hundreds of years. Moreover, it's also been the go-to material for high-class furniture and wooden ornaments for millennia. Its dark brown color with purple and chocolate patterns make it the perfect choice for the back and sides of acoustic instruments decades ago. But due to its price and scarcity, it's been mostly used to dress the fretboard of high-end instruments only. Rosewood's tone can be described as warm, mellow, round, and sweet. It makes the perfect match for instruments in all genres and from all manufacturers. You can come across a rosewood fretboard on a metal stage as much as in a jazz stage, and everything in between. As a curious fact, only a few all-rosewood instruments were made in the late 60s by Fender, and one of them famously ended up on the rooftop of a building in one of the most famous last concerts of all time. Ebony. Ebony is a pitch black, heavy, and precious tone wood that, just like it happened with rosewood, has been used to make premium furniture and ornaments for centuries. Ebony usually looks like a black tile, with the same smoothness and touch and glossy natural finish. Ebony is mainly used as a fretboard wood, and it can be found only on the finest instruments. Many people mistake its sound for being something like rosewood, but given its density, ebony has a different kind of snap that's closer to that of maple than to rosewood. Hence, it doesn't jump at you as Wenge would, but it definitely cuts the mix with enough weight and high end to occupy the front of the stage. The clarity, punch, looks, and stability of ebony have made it a sought-after premium tone wood, but its increasing scarcity has made its price go up even further, leaving many brands looking for substitutes like Macassar Ebony. You can find ebony fretboards on the Yamaha TRB-JP2 John Patitucci signature bass, the almighty Gibson RD, and the Fender Ultra series. Ebony fretboards scream, shout, and snap. That's why their mid-range is legendary among players. It's so sharp and explosive that your audience won't know what makes your bass sound so good, but will enjoy it the whole show.